Hello and welcome to Pull or Pass After Dark. This is our special show where we talk about stuff that doesn't fit the Pull or Pass format, and or we overran, and or whatever the hell we like, because it is our extra show. It is also X-rated because I like it that way, and it's not on Fab Radio, it is just available on our Spotify and our Mixcloud. I'm Mark. Hello, Zach. Hello, Zach.
Hello, Mark.
We have got a guest with us today. Rory is here. And Rory, as is traditional, even though you were on the show on Saturday, which we definitely didn't have time to do this for, as is traditional, all of our guests, they get an opportunity to answer our geeky interview questions. So, should we go straight into it?
Unless I'm running the interview, in which case I'll kind of play fast and loose with those laws.
I know. I like them, though, so that's why we're doing it. Hello, Rory.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Zach.
What is your geek origin? What first got you into comic books?
So really my love of really more superheroes really was kind of more beginning with the actual cartoons that were happening in the late 80s, early 90s, really. And as much as I did read comics when I was a kid, particularly like the Sonic the Hedgehog comics, if anybody remember reading those when they were growing up.
No, I'm too old.
Of course, you're not a Sega kid like me. That was kind of really... So really video games was more my thing growing up, really. And so really, and then during the time of the superhero resurgence in the 2000s, and then I think really, when I saw the V for Vendetta movie, that was kind of my first sort of interest, because the name Alan Moore had popped up. In fact, the Culture Show actually on BBC did a whole thing about Alan Moore, and so I watched that. I thought, this sounds interesting. I'd quite like to see what the V for Vendetta movie is. So I actually watched that. Didn't like it, but I did actually get the comic actually afterwards, and that was kind of sort of my first sort of like I kind of like this.
It's a great book.
So yeah, and so really anything that had Alan Moore's name on it, that was the thing that kind of wanted me to sort of read more about him, his works. So that led to Watchmen, and that led to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Superheroes kind of came a little bit later, but I was really into Batman. So really it was stuff like Year One, and eventually Dark Knight Returns. And then that kind of grew to the point that I am now writing about comics, essentially.
Yes, you do. You write for a website. Tell us about that.
So it's adventuresinpoortaste.com, or AIPT for short. This is something that Zach actually knows very well, because you are writing for it.
I am.
You both write for AITP. That's not catchy.
No,
it's not.
Also AIPT.
Whatever. See, it's not catchy.
It used to have an exclamation mark, actually, so when that was the original.
AITP!
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a great abbreviation, unfortunately.
No.
But I've been writing for
It's a good website, though. I have been on it.
Yeah. I've been writing for them for nearly 3 years now, and nearly 3 years, and it's been a real joy writing for a lot of comics, and if there's any sort of articles, even films.
Can people search for your name on that?
Kind of. It doesn't necessarily work, though.
If you go to the About page, you have a whole list of all the people who are involved in the site. So you will see my name and Zach's, and then you just find a whole list of all the articles I've done, which are mostly just comic book reviews, but it's still a treat.
Okay, cool. What is your comic book Mount Rushmore? You've got 4 characters, and we've got an imaginary sculptor. What would you put on the side of a giant mountain that used to belong to Native Americans and white people stole it? I only discovered that recently.
Damn, this guy.
I only discovered that recently, and I was appalled, but I really like the question, so I've kept it, even though...
So did it used to be like
it was like
the top 4?
No. It wasn't like Sitting Bull and shit like that, but it was kind of like quite a sacred Native American mountain that they sculpted and white people's faces onto it.
I'm going to put this on the table. I think we need to find a different, less upsetting monument.
Well, I'm never going to mention it again, but I just felt like I should acknowledge that I've discovered it and it sucks, but it's still a good question. Anyway, Rory, what would be on your comic book Mount Rushmore? Don't say Native Americans.
I'm trying to think of, was it Thunderbird?
I might sit the rest of this episode out.
It's harrowing, isn't it? It's absolutely harrowing. I was heartbroken. It's the worst. But Mount Rushmore.
Yes. It's not Thunderbird. One is Batman, I have to say.
Good choice.
Because...
Solid choice.
He is literally like my number one superhero. I've got something like 40 Batman books. It's just insane. I just love that guy so much. And the second one, I would go for Death from Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Okay.
I just think she is the coolest, like, almost kind of goth chick you can have in a comic, I have to say.
She's kind of hot.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I even have a Death t-shirt as well, to show you how much I really love that character. The third one, you know what, I quite like Ampersand, the monkey from Why the Last Man.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Every Mount Rushmore should have a monkey.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's a slight challenge, but...
Or an animal of some description.
Yeah, I just felt like, well, I've got a man and I've got a woman. I need an animal in there. So
good.
I just think, yeah, Ampersand is just great.
He's got a nice face.
Yeah, it's a cute little thing.
Yeah.
And lastly, I had to put a lot of thought into this. You know what? It's actually from another Brian K. Vaughan title, Saga.
Okay.
And it's specifically Hazel, the baby.
Ah, so you've got a man, a woman, a monkey, and a baby.
That's a family right there. Yeah,
that is good. Why in particular Hazel though?
I think she's just really. I mean, specifically the toddler Hazel, actually, because as much as I'm a big fan of Saga, as that series, and in fact we're expecting to see that return at some point this year, I was very excited about the prospect of when Hazel is going to speak actually in the series, and she does, and it's absolutely adorable. Really like her a lot.
And the final question. Dream TV show. What would be your dream TV show based on a comic book? Who would you cast in any major roles? And I know this is kind of harder these days with everything that's happening. We might even have to cut this eventually because everything will be done except Thunderstrike. Moving on. What would be your dream TV show?
That honestly is the bit that's because you literally just said just the stuff before, and it is literally like a lot of my favourite comic books are actually making their way into TV or film. I mean, literally last year we had a Watchmen TV show, which I absolutely loved. I really did not know what to expect from that. It was clearly a new story set in that world, and I just, like I said, I had no expectation of what that was going to be, and I really loved it. My two really long favourite sort of extended run comic book runs is the Sandman, which is actually coming to Netflix,
which I can't wait for.
I'm so excited about. I mean, that I do feel like Netflix seems to be the perfect place for something like for Sandman, because there's so many distinct stories kind of happening in that world. And in terms of who would be a great Morpheus, the Sandman himself, honestly, I mean, it's not going to happen because he's Loki. Tom Hiddleston.
That would have been good.
Yeah.
I might have cast 80s Robert Smith.
Yeah.
Not current Robert Smith, but 80s Robert Smith.
I like current Robert Smith, where he looks like he's still doing it but can't really be arsed.
True.
Got a lot of respect for the aging goth going, oh, fine, I'll put on the makeup.
And the lipstick's
not having a good time.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why I think Tom Hiddleston is that it's not even so much Loki, it's that there was a really good vampire film he did years ago called Only Lovers Left Alive. If you see him in that, he practically looks like Morpheus in that. So it's like, give him that role, honestly. But the other comic book run that I really love, and that actually is happening on TV, is Why the Last Man.
Which
is it? Isn't it? It's been talked about for forever.
They're changing the lead, aren't they?
They've lost, Barry Keoghan, which honestly I'm kind of glad, because he's not. He's a great actor. He's not the most obvious choice to play Yorick, and I'm kind of glad, because I think honestly I can't really think of anyone now. Had they made the show years ago, it would have either been Zachary Levi from Chuck,
okay,
yeah,
or John Krasinski from The Office, the American Office.
Right.
Yeah.
Any one of those two would have been good, because they're slightly nerdy, quite handsome. I can see them as Yorick Brown. I think it's a very tough role to nail. I think I can't really think of anyone.
Who would you cast as Ampersand?
What other good actors are there? I can't. Well, there's something.
I'm sorry.
Unless they could go the CGI route.
It would be CGI, and unless they had Peter what's his face, who was Gollum.
Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis, not Peter.
That's right.
Peter Jackson.
Andy Serkis.
No, Peter Jackson, Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis would. I mean, I was taking the piss.
Andy Serkis now just crouching on someone's shoulder.
Yes, because he's Andy Serkis, he can do anything. And I was taking the piss, but you know, I mean, if you're not doing a CGI monkey, get in Andy Serkis.
I mean,
to make a CGI monkey. Wait, what?
This is. It is the kind of monkey though that was in Friends. So.
Oh yeah.
It is.
I can't remember what they're called, but they clearly can be trained.
Capuchin monkey.
Yes, yeah.
Will that monkey still be alive?
I'm not great on monkey lifespans, Mark.
Maybe we could cast Ross's monkey.
Marcel.
Marcel! Cast Marcel! Other capuchin monkeys are available. So yeah,
we assume.
So you would stick with capuchin. You wouldn't like go crazy and have a gibbon or anything.
No. I mean, like, look. I mean, the one other good monkey I can think of is the one from His Dark Materials.
That's true.
And they slightly changed the type of monkey he was supposed to be.
Did they?
They did it a little bit. I can't remember the actual specific type of monkey.
Is this a telly show?
The telly, yeah.
I enjoyed his blue face.
Yeah.
I was like, that can't be a real monkey. So I looked it up and it's a real monkey with a blue face.
I mean, this is a little true story. My mum was watching a David Attenborough show that had that exact monkey in it before the first episode of His Dark Materials was out. So it was like, that's the same monkey.
What's the name of the breed of monkey? Because forever we'll call it the blue face monkey because it's a monkey with a blue face.
It's golden something. It is a golden monkey as it's always been, but I can't think of it.
Blue face monkey. So, but you would keep the capuchin. You wouldn't go for a blue face monkey.
Oh yeah, I would love to see a frankly live monkey because that would just be the best.
Never work with children or animals is the phrase, but I don't know.
Adams.
All Mark Adams, probably, yeah. Right, so if you were casting this, would you have a real life monkey or would you have a CGI monkey? This wasn't supposed to be a serious question.
Really, it could be a combination of the both. It's always the case nowadays. Maybe a little bit puppetry work.
Puppet monkey, but not one with a blue face.
You could even get like one of the actors from the show Monkey.
You could. Oh, aren't they like 90 now though?
Heyo, Matt. Heyo, Mark. Heyo, Zach.
Did you call us Mac? Because that is the name of... If you've seen the logo of the show, that is the name of our superhero on our show logo, The Mac.
Yeah.
Which is literally a combination of Mac and Zark. Mark and Zach. So well done. You kind of accidentally...
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say accidentally.
Accidentally, kind of... He's not in the room because he's not real. There was a cat in the room earlier.
There was. He's elsewhere.
We're not in the Fab Radio studios because this isn't going to be going on Fab Radio because this is our extra stuff where we can not worry about timescales and stuff.
Aye, yeah, that.
But there might be a cat meowing, which, there are worse things.
Yeah,
I like cats.
And also just to geek out, essentially.
It's essentially an indulgence. Because we talk a lot, don't we, dear?
I mean, we have our moments.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Yeah. What's the format of this one, Zach? It's based on your book group talk.
I didn't really realise we had a format for this. I was just going to wing it, but...
Wow. The professionalism is remarkable.
I mean, I can employ the kind of book club questions if you want.
No. I mean, you could. That would be very long, and it would kind of... ruin the book club for you. Well, you two went to the book club this week, and I didn't.
We can relive it. I should have made notes of what everyone said and just fed them back to you now.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
We'll probably have one question from Hawkeye because that always keeps coming up.
6 months.
And we'll there is a question at the book group every month about which character you would like to slap. My answer to that is Superman. But anyway, so yeah, we're talking about All-Star Superman, which was read last week at your book group. Tell everybody about the Manchester book group, Zach.
So Manchester Comic Book Club. We're on the Facebooks and the Twitters.
We are.
We are the first Tuesday of every month. Currently at the Bank Pub on Mosley Street. Drifting between tables until we've got enough seats. next month we'll be discussing Lady Killer by Joelle Jones and Jamie S. Rich, which is from Dark Horse.
Because the idea of this is to do this once a month after we've had the comic book group meeting and make it a regular Pull or Pass After Dark.
Yes.
And the idea is to bring in people like Rory, different people from the group, to come and have a chat with us about it. And it does mean I've got an excuse to not turn up.
I mean, I don't know if it does, but it's an excuse you're using.
Well, it's a reason. There's a difference between a reason and an excuse.
Debatable. But yeah, I think between varying people who turn up for every meeting, we should probably have a different guest every month, I think. If we time it right.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting. That's good.
Yeah, that's the idea anyway. If it goes horribly today, then we probably won't do it again.
I mean, we did last month, and I don't know how many people were super invested in Will and TKO Comics, but I like to think that was a real, we
got the same number of listeners we always did, which isn't as many as I'd like, but it's not none. So, people still listened in, even though it was like a mighty hour-and-a-half episode.
I don't really think much can stop us.
No. Go team. So, this was actually your pick, wasn't it, Rory? When Zach asked for recommendations of books, you kind of pounced on him and said, All-Star Superman, please.
I've been desperately wanting to talk about this book for probably since the second year of the comic book club, because
how many have we had now, Zach?
So this meeting was 42.
Yeepers.
So
that's many. What's 42 divided by 12?
Maths Zach can't do right now.
12, 24, 36. It's been going nearly 4 years.
We're in
year 4.
Year 4? Yeah.
It'd be 48 for 4 years, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so we're in year 3.
Yeah.
No. Yes?
Well, it was late 2016 when we started it. Certainly just before the Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah.
Because we did a book
I think it was August or September, so...
Oh, yes, we read the one about cancer.
Yeah, The Oath.
That's the one, The Oath.
And incidentally, the first book we did was Lock and Key, which came up on Netflix.
I am so excited about Lock and Key. I'm very, very excited about Lock and Key. But we'll talk about that another time.
Yes, we'll do another.
Sorry, Rory, why did you pick this book? Tangent.
Well, I mean, this is kind of a strange... Because it's about Superman, really. I mean, I guess when I was growing up, basically, when I was watching, superhero cartoons, really, like Batman, I'm pretty sure, but Zach watched the same cartoons, really. Superman was never really my thing. It's not that... I had certainly seen some of the shows and the Justice League cartoon and stuff like that, but really my love for Superman kind of grew very, very slowly from watching the early Christopher Reeve movies, certainly the first 2, and then really once I actually got into comics at some point, it was just maybe I should. I've heard good things about this particular Superman book, maybe there's a good starting point, and it really was. So I spent, I don't know how much on the Absolute Edition, which is quite a big hardcover.
Yeah, we've got an Absolute Edition and a Standard Edition with us, and the Absolute Edition is a monster with a gigantic presentation box, and it looks rather swanky, and I don't even want to know how much that costs, because the standard version cost me £17. I'm rather sore about it.
I've got the 2 single volumes as well, so we can line them all up if you want as a kind of development.
Because this is a visual medium.
It is. Hey, we can have an alternative photo on our Mixcloud and whatever.
We could if you wanted. That does involve me working out how to change the photo. I do know how to do that, I just don't want to.
All I can say is, mine's bigger than yours.
LOL! 18 plus show. Anyway. Yeah, talking about... So, let's talk about the back cover. It annoyed me. At least the back cover of my edition. The back cover of your edition has got...
Yeah, I think we're going to have different...
Okay, so the Ultimate Edition has got Lois and Clark having a snog. The back cover of mine is...
Superman's back.
It's Superman's back, which isn't great, but also... It also completely wanked over the creators, but didn't actually specify anything about what the comic book was about. So I assumed it was an origin story, like a year 1 or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
And that's dismal. Write a blurb, rather than just going, oh, the creators are great, they've done all these things, and this is well loved, and fuck off.
Yeah, I hadn't realised that, yours is just quotes from reviews, and then
combining their singular talents to create a new and brilliant vision of the Man of Steel. Wank, wank, wank. Doesn't tell you anything about the book.
Singular talents does imply that they only have a talent if they're together.
Ugh. Just really frustrating. Write a blurb rather than wanking over the creators.
Yeah, is there not even like a...
No.
Okay.
No.
No, like look, interior blurb, like an old novel?
No.
Oh, damn.
No. No. Tells you nothing about the book.
That's it.
Other than it's got Superman in it.
It feels like it's missing like a, like author portrait on the back cover.
On the dust jacket of the Absolute Edition I've got, it doesn't really give you a synopsis. It just tells you who Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely is, and what the books they've done together.
So more wanking.
More wanking.
I think mine might have an actual synopsis.
Does it?
You can check if you want.
No, that involves sitting up.
But I think my edition's from like
forever ago,
13 years ago, I guess.
Oh, I didn't realise this was that old. I thought it was relatively new.
Between 2000, I think the first trade's 2006 and the second one's 2009.
Yeah, they started publishing it when it was doing single issues. It was like in 2005.
So
it took a bit of time for the issues to.
Yeah, it took 4 years to 12 issues.
Good grief! So it's 15 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't realise it was that old.
This is the Absolute Edition I've got is the 10th anniversary edition, essentially.
So. Right. Full confession here. Don't like Superman, so I probably wasn't going to be non-biased coming into this.
Superman, Lois and Clark, New Adventures,
what?
Smallville, the good stuff.
I like Lois and Clark.
Everybody likes Lois and Clark.
I don't want to watch it again.
Show I can't say their name on.
You know when you watch stuff back that you loved as a kid, and then you watch it back and it's cack. I don't want Lois and Clark ruined.
The guy who played Riker from Next Gen's in one episode, and doesn't that make you a little bit curious about rewatching it?
Just one episode.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Jonathan Frakes.
Jonathan Frakes.
He's in at least one episode that I remember.
Is he a goodie or a baddie?
He's a baddie, of course.
Oh my goodness.
If you made a cameo, I'm pretty sure you're a bad guy.
True. Well, he could have owned a bookshop or something. Or he could have been a friendly librarian.
Riker's books.
Frakes books.
This was certainly before his We Made That Up. That whole when he did that whole it was kind of like a pseudo documentary series for, I think it was Sci-Fi Channel, and it was basically like quote unquote true stories, and at the end of it, is it true or is it not? We made it up. And that was literally the whole show. It was literally him. They'll do the story of like dramatize it, and it's literally him booking any of it. Did we make it up? Yes, we did.
Did they ever like not have one where it was true?
Oh yeah, they've had certain stuff. Really.
That does sound fun. I've never watched it. Tell you what I did watch. The Mass... it wasn't called The Mass Magician. It was where they basically...
Oh, yeah.
It was presented by Mitch Pileggi from The X-Files, and they basically just shit on all of magic and revealed all the tricks. It was great.
With the weird masked guy who looked like...
Yeah, The Masked Magician. It wasn't called The Masked Magician.
No, it wasn't.
It was called Mitch Pileggi is great. It wasn't.
No, but I remember it. Someone told me years later that the masked guy was... Is it Penn or Teller that's the bigger guy?
It can't have been, because he wasn't that big.
Yeah, but someone assured me of that, and it's
it wasn't.
I've never bothered to check.
I think it was actually an Italian guy. I think that he kind of outed himself years and years and years later.
Then went on to become part of Penn and Teller.
Possibly.
Yeah. Go back to, because you just said like Lois and Clark. I certainly watched episodes of it, so it wasn't like I negated it, but I think the thing that kind of really got me was really Christopher Reeve, because I think he did it the best, frankly, in terms of being both Clark Kent and Superman. So it was like then. But yeah, I just feel like I think that those two films at least kind of really embodied what I thought was fascinating about the character, was that he wasn't always perfect. Yes, he had these amazing powers, but he can't always save everyone. And so, like, for instance, the scene, which is actually evoked here in All-Star Superman, which we will obviously get into, the death of Pa Kent, Jonathan Kent, that happened in the first film of a heart attack, and it ends, and afterwards, it's him basically going, have all these gifts and do all these powers, I couldn't even save him. Suddenly, that was kind of the thing that kind of clicked with me about the character.
Yeah.
Is that he can't, as much as he wants to, can't always save everyone. But he's always willing to try, and I really love that.
I think, for me, the because he's so. This has always been my problem with Superman, because he's so straight-laced, so good in every way, and so moral, and he fails in the way you described, but never fails when it comes to making bad choices about life. We've all done dumb stuff, like gone with the wrong guy or girl, or done stuff we know is wrong, but we were drunk. You know, and he doesn't feel... Well, I mean, I know he isn't, but he doesn't feel quite human enough to me in a lot of stuff that I've read and watched about Superman. I just think I like my anti-heroes because they resonate better with me, because I'm not a perfect human.
Yeah, I think Batman is kind of... I'm more of a Batman fan than I am a Superman fan, and he is someone who you absolutely see the flaws in him. You know, they definitely lean more into the vigilante aspect towards him, certainly when Frank Miller was doing it, and he was all about really finding the flaws and making really a thing. Maybe to sometimes almost criminal, like a little bit too much at times with the later the Miller Batman books. I think with Superman, though, I think it's more the fact that he comes from Smallville. It's a very simple formula. He's kind of learning very simple life values, and that in a way kind of shapes him, so to speak. It's not so much finding out who he really is and becomes Superman. It's really the parents, I would say, that it comes from that, I would say.
I think so, but right, here's the thing. His parents are portrayed as very decent human beings with good values and stuff like that, but I don't know if portraying that area of America and America's culture as perfect and with no flaws is actually helpful, because there's a lot of problems going on in like very like isolated areas of America. There's issues that perhaps we won't go into, but I'd be interested to see if they ever played with that. You know what I mean?
I feel like it's kind of unexplored, especially. I feel like we get the origin of Smallville's very nice, and then we move to Metropolis, and there are problems in Metropolis.
But there's absolutely no problems in Smallville, which...
I guess we saw some stuff through various forms of Superboy and problems in small towns, but I see where you're coming from.
You understand what I'm getting? I don't think idolising and putting that kind of area and lifestyle of America as perfect and everybody's good is helpful, actually.
I think sometimes placing him in a sort of an existential crisis can at times be interesting. I guess there's also an element of how much can you put a sort of a real world aspect to Superman, which sometimes, certainly this book doesn't do. Also Superman's a very whimsical read, I would say, really. It's kind of placing... It's more inspired by kind of more the Silver Age stuff, really, of comic books, really, which they're much more... There's more playful sort of fantasy aspects going on with it, so to speak, really. So it doesn't always... As much as I do think it does about... It certainly explores everyday stuff, such as taking a dog for a walk. There are still these very simple things like humans that we experience. It's just that because it's Superman, you can go big and grand with it, which is something I really like about how Grant Morrison approached Superman in this book.
So I'm going to go into the kind of the meat of the book now. I feel there were some elements of it that really, really should have been explored more. They touched on the potential age issue of someone who is an alien who will live for hundreds of years, falling in love with a person who will die 80, 90 years old, and his fear of what will happen as she grows older. Lois and Clark. And I thought that was done really nicely for like a few panels, and then never looked at again. And I think to bring up something so important and so kind of quintessential, really, when you've got a relationship and there's that kind of issue. My partner's younger than me, and I do worry about what happens when I'm very frail and he's still doing all right, So for them to bring that up, something so almost personal, but to me, but to something so important that lots and lots of people encounter, and kind of emphasise it through aliens and comic books and superheroes and stuff, and then to just, we're only going to do like a quarter of an issue on this and never talk about it again. I thought, well, no. That could have been a series in itself.
This is something that did come up at Comic Book Club, is that I think there's a lot of ideas in here that could have been further explored. I think 12 issues, and it does feel like Grant Morrison does the same thing that happened with his X-Men run, where there's a lot of, this is nice and all, but that's done, sorry. And I feel like a lot of
almost
stuff
glossed over.
Yeah, I feel like there are ideas that happen in a single issue that could have happened over an entire volume. So, I get where you're coming from with that. Don't get me wrong, sometimes like you're looking at the first page with the kind of origin summed up in 4 panels, which is a good example of that being done well, but I think some things do deserve more time.
I think also it's just that, because a little bit of background about the All-Star imprint as it is, it's the idea that basically what DC wanted to do was to publish a series of comics about one character, like just a limited series that basically kind of encompasses the iconic, timeless fashion of each of these characters. Okay. So that led us to All-Star Superman and All-Star Batman by All-Star Batman Robin and Robin the Boy Wonder, which was by Frank Miller and Jim Lee. And I know I particularly have not read that one. You have, haven't you?
It's one of the worst Batman books of all time.
Really?
I've never read such garbage. It completely made me think that I've just got no time for Frank Miller.
Well, funnily enough, I didn't know the concept because it didn't give me anything on the back of the book. I thought All-Star Superman was a reference to the fact he got through in the sun. The reference to the star.
Yeah, well, I think
so. That's a massive flaw of the volume, the edition that I bought.
Yeah,
it didn't tell me what the concept was.
Yeah,
it seems like the newer editions are dependent on the idea that you already know what you're buying.
So I almost feel cheated that there are elements of this book that I really disliked because I didn't know what the format was supposed to be. I literally, when you told me, Rory, found out what the format of this book is. So I feel a little bit cheated, actually.
Yeah,
maybe I should look at it in a different way, because all my notes are about criticising stuff like not enough on this. That's a weird way to end the first volume of that's a weird way to end the first comic of the 12-part series. So what I mean by that is, I'm Superman at the end of issue 1, and it just felt like it took away a huge part of the Superman mythos. I mean, she didn't believe him, but that's a different point. So now I understand the format. I almost feel like my reading of it, because I didn't know what it was supposed to be doing, maybe I need to reassess it, because I've been quite critical.
Yeah, I think with because it's true, like I said, this is really the first full-blown Superman comic I've read. Really, the only comic I read prior to this that had Superman in it was The Dark Knight Returns, which does not paint a great sort of positive light on Superman, has to be said.
It doesn't paint a very positive light on Batman either, though.
That's true. But I think with this book, it's true, like, it's not an origin story. It pretty much does that in the first page, and there were plenty of other comics out there that have done really their own spin on the origin story, which I can actually recommend. But I think with this, it's more about Grant Morrison is looking at the history of the character, because that's always been Grant Morrison's thing, with looking at very particular DC characters, look at the history and kind of pinpointing what can I take to tell the story that I want to tell. And that's why you have the idea of Superman dying essentially of cancer. Okay, that's like sort of that's the big thing, sort of the theme, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what basically is issues now? What aspects of Superman's history I can tell, essentially? So which is why you have a whole issue of Lois Lane, like her perspective. You have a whole Jimmy Olsen issue. There's a whole issue about Lex Luthor. It's more, like I said, a lot of it's very much inspired by a lot of the Silver Age stuff. So, of the fact that there was literally something like 7 Superman type comics that was happening at that time in the 50s and 60s. So it does feel like he's kind of using a lot of that and tries to tell it on to it, which I think is, honestly, I think it's near perfect for me. I've really loved this book.
My gut reaction to to the concept now is that it's a terrible concept. You compare that to the incredibly intelligent and well written and heartbreaking, what's the Spider-Man one called, where it takes it century by century?
Life Story.
That is a great concept. This is give a good writer 12 issues to encapsulate a character. That's no wonder I didn't like it, because that was never going to work for me. I feel everything was rushed. I feel everything was watered down, and Silver Age stories stay in the Silver Age because we're more sophisticated now, and no, I dislike this book even more now.
I can understand the Silver Age influence. I think stuff like Black Hammer took a lot of Silver Age and ran with it, but in this, I feel like there's some bad Silver Age influence in there, and this is a book that is terrible to women, just throughout its entire 12 issues.
I didn't like Paranoid Lois. She just came across as really, really stupid. She had undeniable evidence in front of her and just refused to believe it.
Yeah, as the great investigative journalist, it's like... And I get but Clark's convinced her for years that he's not Superman, because that's what she thought, but then... Come on, I don't... Even at the end, when everyone... It's not just Lois, everyone goes, cracking Clark costume, Superman. It's like... Bullshit. No fucking way.
Absolutely. No.
But there's other things like Lilo of The Replacements, who barely speaks, and then now she's dead, and we did all the conversation with Clark's ancestor, and that's just really shitty to, two of the only women characters we actually get, and it kind of suggests that this idealised, brilliant Superman is kind of a dick to a lot of people. And I don't know if I agree with that.
And is it kind of a poke at Silver Age attitudes towards women, or is it just badly written stuff that should have been better in the year 2005?
I suppose we'll never know. I mean, it's easy to believe that Silver Age wasn't great for women.
I didn't expect you to dislike this book as much as me, Zach, and I don't want to attack our guest. I feel really harsh.
No, I really liked this book. I read it... So I read it like 10 years ago, and I really liked it at the time. I feel like only on the reread of it have I kind of seen that, some of it isn't great. Like, even when Lois has superpowers, she just doesn't use them. It becomes an issue about three guys who all want Lois Lane, rather than an issue about Lois Lane Superwoman. Yeah. So, I don't know. The little things like that are hard to look past, especially... I feel like we've come a long way for, feminism and equality, and this isn't the most equal.
Yeah, I just... In my head, this concept is a terrible idea. And I know you like it, Rory, so I'd like to know why you think it's a good idea. Try and convince me, because I can't work anything in my head as to why this could have worked, because I don't feel like it did.
I just feel like... For one thing, I think Grant Morrison really gets Superman that very few writers do. He's a very tough character to write, and obviously with characters like a lot of the DC characters, really, like Superman, Batman, it really just depends on how you approach it, and especially with Superman, it's very hard. I just like the fact how, despite the fact that he is dying, he does have these he's even more powerful than what he usually is, and yet he still feels oddly... There's something approachable about him. He's very... it's not like he's big, grandstanding, As much as they do kind of poke at the idea of him as like God. I mean, there's literally... the fact they make him like an all-star, like literally all-star Superman, that really means like he's essentially a living star. But I feel like seeing stuff like him hanging out with his parents, just the interactions, like there's a very human quality to it that I just feel so good. Like every time I read this book, despite how he died, even though he dies, I still feel really good about it, because I just feel like, why can't humanity be more like this, so to speak, really?
Yeah, and the metaphor of Superman is always strong. It's and I guess that is well done in this book. There were some elements of this book that I really, really liked. But before we go on to anything else, Zach, when there were like 6 or 8 people at the meeting, were more people on the kind of Rory side, or more people on the Mark side, or were the moderates?
I think it was pretty mixed. I think
that doesn't actually happen very often.
No,
it's either that most people love it and there's one guy in a corner, or everybody loves it, or everybody hated it. It's rare that you get mixed. So that's fascinating.
I think what was noticeable. I think people who had read this kind of a while ago liked it more, and I think people who had just come to this fresh weren't as sold on it, I think is the...
So you think it's not aged very well?
It doesn't seem like it felt like there was a... so there's a group of us who had all read this a while ago, so Rory and myself, who all had some positives from it, but then I think a lot of people who had come at it fresh, I don't know, within the last month, weren't as 100%. So maybe that's something. Also, to be fair, both the women who came to the group did not like this.
Interesting.
So
I think for me with this, this is, of all the comics I've read, this is the one I've reread the most times, really. So it's one of those stories that always kind of sticks with me every time. And yes, there are slightly nitpicky things you can absolutely learn about it. I mean, certainly the first time I read it, there was certainly stuff I didn't understand. Part of that may be to do that it does delve a little, one could say, too deeply into the Superman mythos, like the Bizarro stuff, for instance. Mm-hmm. And also, this is probably, I think this was maybe my first big intro to Grant Morrison, really, as a writer, and knowing and having read a lot of Grant Morrison now, some of his stuff can be really trippy. And it has to be said, not as trippy as, say, something like The Invisibles, or, say, something like Doom Patrol, but there are certainly stuff here where you do kind of go, wait, hang on, what? But I think the more times I've read it, it has really stuck with me.
I've written in here, didn't like the Superman squad. Oh, there's a dog! Because I'm incredibly shallow in a lot of ways. But I also, the Superman squad thing, I actually put that there was a lot of really obvious stuff in here. Stuff that, if you're thinking as you're reading, it was quite obvious that the reveal was going to be that bandaged Superman was future Superman. And I almost wanted it to not be true until the reveal, and I was like, well, I knew that. And there was stuff in that just happened quite a lot.
One of the things that bugs the living hell out of me about Unknown Superman is, but we see him speak to Lois earlier on as Unknown Superman, and for what fucking reason? Just to make a J-Lo joke that's gonna age, has aged, and will forever age real badly.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
And that's odd, isn't it? It's supposed to be like Silver Age, kind of like timeless inspired. I mean, cheeky J-Lo joke.
Yeah, it seems really like left field and just, why is this here?
We have discussed this reading modern stuff. Some of the jokes and the references are so...
right now.
Yeah, they're not going to last. I read Booster Gold stuff from a while back, and I got all the jokes. I was like, I'm old.
Yeah, I agree. I've read a lot of Booster Gold. Yeah, some jokes are a little bit like, yeah, okay, this is of its time. But I think Ultimate everything did the same thing, particularly Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Bendis drops references to stuff that it is so painfully 2001.
And it's
and that's
great
where
at the
those
time.
References belong.
It's great at the time, but this felt like it should have been a bit more timeless than that, and it did really well. I can't think of anything other than the J-Lo joke that aged it.
Kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because it's like, okay, you can't trying to do this timeless Silver Age vibe.
And I thought they did that really well, with the exception
this
of what
one random joke is...
And that's a shame.
Quite random.
I mean, you do get... I mean, literally, the spaceship, when they... in the first mission to the sun, is literally called the Ray Bradbury, you know?
Yeah, which is good. It's a good effort.
Yeah. I mean, also, in terms of the Jello joke, have anyone seen Hustlers? I mean, she's in the now. She's really good in it.
Still, it does... It could have been... I don't know, let's think 2005 J-Lo. It could have been a joke about The Rock starting to act... that would have timed it. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. There's a lot of 2005 references that would have carried in a very weird way.
Yeah. But you're right. The J-Lo one is better than it could have been, but, you know, you could have had anything, and it just seemed like pretty incongruous. I don't want to hate on this book. There's lots of stuff that I liked. The one page where he saves a suicide victim, emphasising how much of a real hero Superman is, was incredibly important, and probably my favourite page of the entire book, because yes, he's got all these superpowers, but he helps someone in a very real and honest and didn't need superpowers kind of way, and that is Superman to me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was excellent. You could put that in any Superman comic at any point as just a page of where he's in between going from fighting Lex Luthor to I don't know.
Did you just say
going
Lex
to the
Luger?
Luthor.
Okay, sorry.
Luthor. And then going to the Daily Planet, he just stops on the way to help someone who's about to top themselves. That's fantastic. That I'd spent a lot of time going, I don't like this. That was great.
There are a lot of little glimpses of him saving people. That we see a panel that's just kind of looks like it's just a shot of a car, and it's him at the side flying around to save someone.
Yeah,
there's him as Clark walking into someone to stop them. I don't know, mysteriously dying when a pipe falls from somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think the more kind of human moments are better in this.
And now I'm going to go back to being critical. There were jokes about, well, isn't Clark Kent such a hulking, big, gigantic man? We don't believe he's Superman, though. That was bollocks. But that has always been an issue for me with Superman. Come on. I take my glasses off, I look like Mark, but I can't fucking see. I'm sorry. The glasses as a disguise is bollocks. It's been bollocks from day one. You can't put any set of glasses on a person and people who know them well wouldn't recognise them. You could put them in the craziest of glasses with fucking flamingos and palm trees. You know the kind of things I'm talking about.
I think that would make you more noticeably Mark Adams.
You know what I mean. You've seen those crazy Dame Edna glasses. It's still someone you know wearing a pair of glasses. And then you take the fact that it's a man that's built like a tank wearing glasses who really looks like fucking Superman.
He changes his posture.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. This is the absolute worst thing about Superman that has always driven me crazy. Since I was about 5, and anyone who didn't recognise that Clark Kent was Superman in any format of Superman because he put a pair of glasses on is stupid, and it undermines any character of intelligence in a Superman book.
Based on a synopsis I read recently, I'm pretty sure Bendis is doing away with Clark Kent though at the moment.
Yeah,
good.
I think they're stopping that. No, I just think, like I said, it's always been a very dicey. I mean, that's something that goes back way before the comics. But I think, again, it just depends on how you make that work. And something like Christopher Reeve, I think, absolutely makes that work. You absolutely believe he is two different people. But I think with All-Star Superman, and I think it's time to give a shout-out to the artist, Frank Whiteley. I think his art is sublime, and I'm a huge fan of his art anyway. And
it's great.
He absolutely... I think
in this...
Oh, here we go.
No, I have no problem with Frank Whiteley. I think here it looks like he spent weeks on the art.
Yeah.
And I think in other books it looks like he spent 25 minutes on an issue.
Right.
And it's done, and who gives a shit, really? I think this seems like...
So was this a big deal, All-Star Superman and All-Star Batman? Were these kind of like big flagship titles for DC?
There was a lot of anticipation, certainly for All-Star Batman, because of the people behind it. So there was more...
So maybe that's why...
Fuck them. Sorry, no, I don't want to be that guy, but I do not like Frank Miller. I don't give a shit about any of his books.
I like Frank Miller.
I know, and I
like the early stuff, the early Miller stuff.
The problem with Frank Miller, more than Frank Miller as a writer, is I started reading comics fucking forever ago, and no one has ever asked if I've read any of Frank Miller's books. They've just assumed that I obviously have.
I heard this on the Paul Pat show.
But every single book he's written that I've looked at, I kind of think, I do not care that this exists.
Tell me you can't say that about Sin City. It's a fucking masterpiece.
I've read some Sin City, and I like it more than his Batman.
The Dark Knight Returns is genius. The Elektra Saga is unmatchably good Daredevil.
I get that.
He's written a lot of tosh, and I don't deny that, but some of the stuff he's written... 300 is a thing.
Yeah, that's very good.
It's very, very Frank Miller, and... I mean, yeah, I get it. He has written some absolute tosh. I'm not going to deny that. But he's written some of the greatest comic books of all time.
And I get that. For me, there are enough people praising Frank Miller and Alan Moore and other such heroes are available,
But
for who will never let it go that, well, if you're going to enjoy comics, Watchmen was the best one, and the best Batman comic was written in the 80s, and you're fucking wrong if you enjoyed anything since. I just think there's a lot of good modern comics.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but and I get the yes, but I know so many people, having worked in a comic shop and stuff, I know people who don't care that comics have happened since 1989.
Really?
And will just tell you that the best stuff happened before you're alive, and I don't need it. I'm
You
happy
get people
to go.
like that with music as well, though.
Yeah, and they're wrong too.
I know they're wrong.
But I'm kind of happy to go. I'm glad people like Frank Miller, but if I've got to choose between Frank Miller's Batman or literally anything that's happened in the last year, I'm going to go for whatever happened in the last year and give attention to someone who needs it rather
Yes,
than
true.
Frank, who doesn't give a shit if you read his book or not.
No.
And you know, his last million continuations to The Dark Knight
They're not
kind of
good.
proof that.
They're not good.
Doesn't matter, because that's what I don't get. Everyone said the second The Dark Knight
Strikes Again, which is not good.
No.
Yeah, everyone said it's not good, but everyone still went and read Master Race.
Which I have
So-
actually read. It's fine.
But if it's fine and the second one was not good, why bother with Master Race? Why give it your money and time?
I think it's because there's a different writer involved, and and a different artist. So I'm kind of interested to see a different perspective on that version of the Batman.
If it's a different writer and it's a different artist, then why is it being sold under the Frank Miller name?
I agree with both of you, but I'm a sucker for a Frank Miller book, and I know I shouldn't be. We're talking about Batman, All-Star Superman.
Yes.
I mean, we can do this with Superman as well. Frank Miller wrote a Superman book last year.
Did he?
And everyone said it was shit, but
Was
I'm
it shit?
sure it's still going to sell really well.
Yeah, that's true.
Part of the DC Black Label, though.
Yeah, and it's a shame because if I was in charge of Black Label, Frank Miller would not be invited because who needs him?
He's a faded star. I can agree with. That I can be down with. But some of it, a lot of what he's written is sublime.
But it's also in the past.
It is.
Where Frank can live happily.
It is. But people still read Jane Eyre.
Yeah,
And Frankenstein.
that's still a great book.
This year.
I get that, but that doesn't mean I don't want Charlotte Bronte to write me a new. I don't want a sequel from Jane Eyre from her.
That is a very good point.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you shouldn't read the original. Let's go back and try not to just absolutely slate this book, because, like I say, there was a lot to like about it.
Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor was great. I thought that the Kryptonians as a metaphor for how we treat animals was really well done. And again, the classic questioning of would we, as the royal we, be as decent as Superman is in his situation? That it was explored really nicely with the evil Kryptonians. And I don't tend to be a massive fan of face turns, but I felt that we're dying, we've thought about it, we understand what we did, and the fact that they acknowledged that they've been proved wrong was a really decent face turn. I thought that, despite that, I know that the woman was basically treated like fucking eye candy.
I just think they deserved more than
one issue.
Oh no, we've flown through a cloud and now we're going to die, and oh my god, the issue's over. I feel like that, again, arc within itself.
It was rushed, I agree, but I thought that their face turn was convincing. They kind of like they'd seen they'd seen how they hadn't looked at the greater the greater concept. What I'm trying to say? They hadn't looked
picture.
The bigger picture. Thank you. They hadn't looked at the bigger picture, realised it, and were like, shit, because people do that.
Yeah.
And so yes, you're right, it was rushed, but the whole thing felt rushed. Every issue felt like there was issues that were rushed. We've covered that already. Mm-hmm. But I did feel that as a metaphor, that issue was so strong, and those, even though the woman wasn't explored, the two evil Supermen were used really very, very well as a metaphor. I did like that. And full confession, I felt like the story had ended by the end of book 10, so I didn't read book 11 and 12. I felt like my story was over there. Should I read 11 and 12?
Yes, because it's heartwarming. I mean, that's the thing. It's weirdly as when they do approach the death, because honestly, anytime they've always approached the death of Superman, particularly like the Dan Jurgens era, it's always very sad. Like, oh no, he's being to a pulp and stuff like that. They always, they make it very much a downer, so to speak. Really, it ends on a very upbeat note, and the possibility that Superman, in some way, could continue. I won't say how, but I actually do want to give a shout out to what I think is the best issue, is issue 10, because not only does it have the Suicide Girl, but it plays with the idea of what would the world be like without Superman.
Yes, and like I say, issue 10 was excellent,
and basically in doing that, created us, essentially. That's basically Earth Q, as it's referred to. That's our world.
Our world, yeah.
That's our world. And the fact that I generally love that you just have these random panels of these old and ancient times creating figures, and you have Friedrich Nietzsche, like you have all these random panels, but the whole point is that, and this is a very Morrison thing, of Superman has always been an idea way before, even, I mean, with Batman, in his Batman run, they definitely make that a thing. Which gets really weird at times, but I think with Superman it's so elegant because the idea of the Superman has always been a thing, even before Friedrich Nietzsche conceived the Übermensch, all that stuff. So the fact that you literally see all these panels and end it with Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster creating Superman himself, I thought was a wonderful sort of touch. Like, yeah, it's always been a thing.
I think this book had flashes of absolute greatness, some moments that were genuinely kind of spine-tinglingly good, in a concept that was so fundamentally flawed that Grant Morrison's a great writer. He had the worst concept given to him and did the very best he could, and you can see that in the flashes of greatness, the flashes of pure brilliance of Superman writing, but it felt rushed. The concept is terrible, like cripplingly terrible, and I'm almost glad that I discovered it on air, because I'd have gone into it even more cynically if I'd have known what the concept was. I think it's, how could anyone write that? Am I being dramatic, or is that fair?
I think you're always quite dramatic.
Well, yes.
That's part of the character, isn't it?
It's not a character, unfortunately.
I think there's a real life Lex Luthor in this world, and there's one in this room right now.
Is that right? Well,
I mean,
without the mass murder, I'd like to point out.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, that makes, he isn't always wrong sound worse, but...
any sort of shout, because any sort of key characters, I actually like some of the more original characters they conceived for the book. So, for instance, Dr. Leo Quinton. I just love this character so much because it's a Willy Wonka style kind of scientist.
He even had a cane.
He had a cane.
He did have a cane,
and he has the best rainbow sort of lab coat. I want that coat. If they make that a thing, I want it.
There's this crazy thing that's called cosplay. Maybe that's for you, Rory.
I can never I mean, for one thing, I don't look as slim. Or indeed have the blonde hair, which I don't think I'll ever achieve.
The last cosplay I did was the Scarlet Witch. You can be what the fuck you like when you do cosplay, mate.
I mean, I've got a Court of Owls mask somewhere, so I think if I get a good...
This is your challenge. That is your cosplay character. Get it on.
Honestly, the closest fit, it's barely even cosplay. I've got so many style sort of geek t-shirt. I'm literally wearing a Superman t-shirt right now, listeners. But
it's not a visual medium, Rory.
That's why I said listen.
I know.
But yeah, that's honestly the closest. But yeah, I just feel like, and we should actually say, this has been adapted, All-Star Superman, into an animated feature.
Oh, I think I knew that, and I don't think I watched it because I'm not very fond of Superman.
Well, I did rent it. Actually, I just watched it, and it's not good. As someone who really loves this book, it was not a good adaptation because it tries to shrink everything down. It tries because it's a bit like I said. You said that it's literally each issue is almost its own story.
Yeah.
And so they try to cut things down, try to keep some things in, and as I was trying to make a single clear narrative, it still feels very disjointed as a movie.
Yeah, that sounds.
It doesn't
terrible.
work. I mean, the same way it's like when they did Batman Year One as an animated film. I don't think it works because the book constantly is time jumping, and they tried to do that exactly like that in the film, and it did not work for me at all. And even just basically somewhat why I don't think the All-Star Superman film is that good is they didn't even give Leo Quinton the rainbow coat, and it's like if you can't even give him that coat, why bother?
Boo. It's a nice coat.
It's a good coat. Leo Quinton is a good character. I think it's a shame he doesn't get more time.
It's a shame lots of things don't get more time, and I think that's my fundamental issue with the whole thing. It could have been, and it clearly proved that it could have been an exceptional piece of work, but in the 12-issue format, I
think it took 3 to 4 years to get out 12 issues. I think in 3 to 4 years they could have had an ongoing series of All-Star Superman.
Good point, well made. But then again, according to you, Frank Quitely would have would have done a very, very bad slapdash job with the artwork there.
People like his slapdash job.
Do they? I like the word slapdash.
I love slapdash.
I'm kind of one of them. I actually like some of the new X-Men stuff he did when Grant Morrison was writing it, especially the Quentin Quire stuff is awesome.
Do you feel that Zach's assessment is fair, that he becomes more slapdash sometimes?
You can definitely see that.
Okay.
I quite like because the thing about Frank Quietly is that he does when he's good he has to really take his time to really get it done, which is why if you ever read something like Multiversity, like there was when Grant Morrison did a limited series called The Multiversity for DC, Frank Quietly did a whole issue on that, and you can tell so long that he must have taken to get that one issue done, and it's incredible.
To go back to his X-Men though, I know that suffered from a lot of you might be getting cancelled, so hurry it up, which is why a lot of the arcs are kind of rushed. And the Quentin Quire stuff is really good, but I do think that is the seed that became an incredible character.
Yeah,
and I think Jason Aaron only served to make Quentin Quire what he should have always been, rather than just a rushed 6 issues and you're done. So I think that's one of the problems with both Frank and Grant. Yeah,
Frank and Grant.
I think Frank and Grant together seem to end up on a lot of projects that are like, all right, guys, come on, wrap it up. Let's get you guys out of here. So, I think Frank Quietly goes back and forth, especially when he's with Grant Morrison. But maybe that's a Grant Morrison thing.
So something I put about this book in my notes was Pull or Pass is a show where we read the first issue of something and decide if we are going to carry on reading. I was irritated by the first issue, and the second issue I didn't get on with either. So under the concept of Pull or Pass, I would not have pulled this. However, as it hit like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I did start to like it a lot more.
See, there is a little bit in issue 1 that I do really like.
Do you think you'd have pulled this? I mean, would you have pulled All-Star Superman had you read issue 1?
Just off issue 1, I'm not sure. I do enjoy, though, I can't think where the panel is. There's a bit with the human bomb screaming at Superman. Where are we? About you're limiting my hopes. You have no rights to limit my ambitions, you fascist. Just because he wants to blow himself up.
Yes.
It's kind of adorably weird at times. I don't know. I'm not a huge Superman guy, and I don't know if Superman in singles would have been for me.
But that exactly what you highlighted. The line of the human bomb was one of those flashes of brilliance that I was talking about.
Yeah,
and
there are glimmers of brilliance.
Yes, I've been I feel like I've been hypercritical, but almost unfairly so, because I don't think anyone could have done better with the fundamentally flawed concept.
I think the idea of, hey, you're a top creator, we want to give you a top character and you can do your perfect version of this, it's a really tough sell. And I think I know there were other projects in this line. There was going to be All-Star Batgirl, All-Star Green Lantern, All-Star Wonder Woman, All-Star... Yeah, I don't know the other ones. But I think it is a really tough challenge. Because when you've got this, hey, you're a big deal, here's a character that's a big deal, and make something that's a big deal, it feels like that's almost too much freedom. As an offer to be made to a creator... I think that's... And maybe that's why All-Star Batman and Robin, the, yada, 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 is kind of a car crash of a comic, because, hey, here's too much freedom, go nuts. And I feel like that's why this is kind of 12 issues that feel rushed at times. I feel like with that amount of freedom, though, did it have to be? Did it have to be 12 issues? Did it have to be...
Could it not have been ongoing?
It's 12... It feels like 12 one-shots.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it does.
I don't know, it's a lot of freedom. And freedom's scary.
Do you think the DC Black Label now has sort of become that, in that you have various distinct artists and writers putting their own spin? I mean, the fact that you talked about the recent Wonder Woman Dead Earth, that just felt like the writer and artist of that book just felt like, this is what I'm going to do with this character, deal with it, and apparently it's done really well.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think Black Label feels like people being given the option to tell a story that's their story with big characters, but without and it's your definitive version. I think Daniel Warren Johnson's Wonder Woman is different and interesting, but it doesn't mess with the idea that it's the definitive version in his eyes. It's just a version he is writing. The same with
and I think it's
Harleen.
And I think they're smaller portions. Harleen is like, it's not
50 pages an issue.
Yeah, but it's not the entirety of her run, kind of encapsulated in X amount of issues. It's a concept thing. So that I don't think anyone. I would read the hell out of Superman life stories, Batman life stories, any fucking life stories. Spider-Man life stories is fucking great, and it's a similar but much more palatable concept than All-Star Superman. All-Star anything, All-Star.
Yeah.
I don't want to read All-Star Batman. I don't want to read All-Star anything.
It's an incredible choice.
Well, even if it was regarded as good, I don't want to read All-Star Batman. Did they cancel it because it wasn't doing well?
All-Star Batman?
No, all of the All-Star idea.
They dropped it, like I say, with a bunch of ideas. I think Adam Hughes was meant to be doing All-Star Wonder Woman, and then that kind of, I think it was 6 years of, oh yeah, that's coming out, and then they bailed on it. And but then,
do we know why they dropped the concept? Was it because it's
probably because it didn't do as well as they probably hoped. I mean,
but this is a really celebrated book, so you'd think, even though the first one didn't succeed, you'd think the second go around being a success would have been
maybe because this one was taking quite some time with the various issues, and I think also the fact that like I said, there was more anticipation towards All-Star Batman, and the fact that even that series didn't even finish. Really. So I wonder if, although it has to be said, like in terms of the people who actually do like All-Star Batman, Grant Morrison's one of them. He weirdly likes the more recent Miller stuff, like Batman stuff.
Some people like to suffer.
I think Morrison is almost like, I haven't seen a lot of like Morrison interviews. He seems to at times to be like a fun contrarian. Although that sometimes the word contrarian can define people in really annoying ways.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm contrary, deliberately so sometimes, but not always deliberately so.
I think we both are at times.
Yeah. I've run out of stuff to say about this book, and I as I was reading it, I didn't feel like quite as critical as I think I've come across, but I think the reason I've come across so critically is I only discovered what the concept was while we were talking. Yeah. And I was appalled by that idea. It was crap. Do either of you have anything else you want to discuss about this book?
I mean, I feel like we've pretty much... I mean, I've been very sort of warm throughout all it.
There's a lot of warmth in the book.
Yeah. Well, I think Lex Luthor and Jimmy Olsen are both really well done.
Yeah.
And there's some amazing moments with both of them. I think the one I pointed out at Comic Book Club is Lex Luthor with the, "Come on, Clark, feel my arm."
Yeah, brilliant.
It's real muscle, that. I think
and again,
dumb
that
little
concept,
jokes are really good.
Yeah, and that concept isn't given enough time. The resenting someone's natural ability to something you've worked hard for is a real human thing, and Superman is the metaphor for humanity, and it's just as great.
Is Lex not also a metaphor for humanity?
Yes, as great as that one line was, they could have done more. And I think maybe if this was an ongoing series, it would have been superb.
Yeah, I like I say, I think more issues would have been of benefit.
Yeah. There's plenty, like I said, I would say it's probably not the best sort of like if you're a newcomer to Superman in general, this is probably not the best start to say. I think, like I said, something like Superman Birthright by Mark Waid and Lionel Francis Yu, that's literally a 12-issue origin story that pretty much sets up who he is, planet, like that sets it all away. So yeah, but like I said, there's plenty of really good. This is still my all-time favourite Superman comic, and absolutely one of my favourite comics of all time, but there was plenty of really good Superman out there to really check out.
I think for me, I'm glad I read it in a way, because it's reinforced that I am able to not go with the mainstream opinion of something and be able to justify it in a lot of ways, which, that kind of feels like I've done all right there, and I did quite enjoy it, and I'm glad that there was some Superman at the comic book group, because we do tend to go for indies a lot.
Yeah, I mean, until this year, we've already had we're going to do 2 Marvel and we're going to do 2 DC, and I think I've only shifted that because I think we need to represent kind of everything a little bit more, and unfortunately DC aren't always great, and neither are Marvel.
No.
And I think they both put out some incredible books, but also not incredible books everyone wants to read. And then, so I don't know.
Like Thunderstrike.
Like Thunderstrike, that's right.
Love me some Thunderstrike. Can we read Thunderstrike at the comic book group?
If you can find it in print with enough copies for like 10 people, yes.
That is my challenge.
That is an incredible challenge.
Get 10 copies of Thunderstrike and we'll read Thunderstrike.
Don't even know what it would be collected as. Just, Eric, the Thunderstrike edition. I don't know what that book would be called.
I need
Thor, the Thunderstrike years.
I need a new obsession.
It's okay. Your obsession's only like 25 years out of date.
And widely regarded as shite.
I understand it though. I have a weird soft spot for him. Everything that I've read with him's like, weird.
Oh, Eric, bless him.
With his
crap
beard
Thor.
And his little eye covering things.
Crap Thor. He was like, had all the power in the world, didn't know what to do with it. Lady Thor didn't have the problems Eric had. She was much better at it than him.
I feel like Jane was better prepared for being a Thor though.
Rude at. What are we talking about? But I think we should probably wrap it up.
I think we've got in.
Do you like Thunderstrike, Rory?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, I'll educate you.
It's he was Thor during Infinity War.
He was more. He was Thor did a naughty and he was banished. No, he didn't do a naughty. Loki trapped Thor, and Odin was like nope, and so just randomly gave a mortal who was a mate of Thor's his powers. They had previously Eric had died and Thor had sacrificed Donald Blake as his human counterpart to save Eric, so they kind of like body shared.
I see.
And then when Thor was like kind of eviled away by Loki, Odin gave the power of Thor to Eric, and Eric was like, fuck, what do I do with this?
And then he managed to get himself a magical lightning mace.
He did. After he did good as Thor, Odin gave him like a shit version of Mjolnir that was a mace.
And then after his second death,
90s Marvel
his
for
son
you.
takes over.
It's so, yeah, his son is now Thunderstruck. 90s Marvel, mate. It was great.
I think that sounds like something that
Batshit
Taika
crazy.
Waititi would have done.
yeah.
It just sounds like he could have done
I
it.
don't know if it was him.
I think runner-up Thors would have been a great movie. I'd watch that.
I would totally watch. I would watch the fuck out of a Thunderstrike teleseries. But that's
It'll
another
be
concept.
Thunderstrike and Beta Ray Bill teaming up in a kind of like, come on, we're as good as Thor, right? Old
Yeah.
horse face.
Yeah.
As someone who's the only reading of Thor I've read is actually the Jason Aaron run, which is really good. That's the Thor I'm sticking with at the moment.
So we are not talking about Thor. We were supposed to be talking about the All-Star Superman, which we kind of did for the majority.
For a while.
For a while. Thank you for listening to Pull a Pass After Dark. I've been Mark, he's been Zach, that's been Rory. Thank you for joining us,
Thank you very much.
and we will see you next time.